Good afternoon, everybody. I would like to welcome you to the second Western Balkans workshop. My name is Ivan Svetlik. I'm working for the EUTOPIA project at Ljubljana University. I'm also chairing the regional platform for benchmarking and cooperation in higher education and research. I will be accompanying you today and tomorrow during the workshop, during the all sessions. Some of you have probably participated in the first workshop, which was focused on the research issues. The question was how to make our research applications more efficient, better, more successful. And today's and tomorrow's workshop is focused on educational issues, more specifically on how to design a good, excellent teaching program. Before we start with the program itself, I would like to invite our rector of Ljubljana University, Professor Igor Papić, to address all the participants. Professor Papić, please.
Yeah, thank you, Ivan. So, dear EUTOPIA colleagues, esteemed guests, welcome to our second Western Balkans workshop. Allow me to say just a few words about EUTOPIA and why it is important for the future of higher education in Europe. Our partnership of 6 universities across Europe forms EUTOPIA, an alliance striving towards openness, equality, inclusion, and internationalization. Even in these rather challenging times, while EUTOPIA partners had to make tremendous changes in order to make the best out of COVID-19 situation, our values have remained intact with minor adjustments. Inclusion gained a digital dimension and internationalization was moved to virtual space, of course. The values of EUTOPIA are just some of the main reasons why the opportunity to deepen and strengthen the regional partnerships of the University of Ljubljana through the EUTOPIA 2050 project is of immense importance. We hope to become the regional partner that will help to overcome the existing challenges in the field of higher education at Western Balkans universities and to promote the exchange of knowledge that will take us all to the new level. We also want to emphasize the support from the European Commission when it comes to our strategic partnerships with the Western Balkans. Just recently, in September 2020, Western Balkan ministers and high-level panelists from the region took part in the European Research and Innovation Days to discuss the region's priorities in research and innovation. From this event, it was obvious that the EC is ready to engage with the region towards a forward-looking Western Balkans agenda on research, innovation, education, culture, youth, and even sports. Our EUTOPIA Alliance, with many international connections, diverse experiences, and a powerful voice in the research, innovation, education, and digital agenda, can only contribute to building better connected, inclusive, and open partnerships in the region. So with this message, of course, I wish you a successful workshop today and tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rector, for this nice words and welcome of the participants. And since some of you who are participating in this workshop are not from the EUTOPIA and have not been with us before, I think a few more words are needed to say what the EUTOPIA actually is. And this will be done by our colleague, Ivaniš. Iris, please.
Hi, everyone. Sorry about this. I forgot to unmute myself. But I will just say a couple words about the EUTOPIA Alliance and the project, and particularly about our work package 5, from which actually comes our workshop and the idea of connection with Western Balkans. So our Utopia Alliance is consisted of 6 partner universities. So University of Ljubljana, Pompeu Fabra University from Spain, Shergill University from France, Free University Brussels from Belgium, University of Warwick from the United Kingdom, and University of Gothenburg from Sweden. We also have, each university has our international partners, which come from South Africa, South Korea, Singapore, USA, Mexico, and Australia. And we're constantly in connection with them and networking with their students and including them in our activities. Main idea behind Utopia Alliance is to promote an integrated, challenge-driven community connecting universities on national and local level governments, connect enterprises, and establish also networks with societies to address societal challenges. Primarily, we have students involved in this, and a lot of our professionals and teachers that are part of Utopia are actively engaged in these activities. So we're really proud to have Utopia do its job that it's supposed to. In numbers, we overall have 165,000 students, over 90,000 international students, 30,000 staff members, 17,465 academic staff, 67 faculties, and 760 research groups, which are amazing numbers, very promising numbers, and these are only expected to grow in the future. For the project itself, the project lifetime is 36 months, so 3 years until 2020, and its basic structure is divided into 7 work packages. These include project management, learning communities, opening research and innovation, placemaking, inclusion in equal societies, open to the world, or in other words, internationalization, and sustainability and dissemination. As part of our work package 5, inclusion is the main value towards which we strive. And key principles of our work package 5 are participation, co-creation, inclusion, and empowerment. And main goal is to provide learning opportunities for all groups of students, especially those who are disadvantaged because of their sex, race, ethnicity, immigrant background, economic status, disabilities, and so on. So every possible group that might be marginalized or might be, a big minority in our environments, we try to involve as much as possible through our activities. Utopia and Western Balkans. So through inclusion, our regional inclusion is very important to Utopia partners and University of Ljubljana especially. And here we strive towards open communication and support lines between regional affected university actors and the Utopia universities, towards enhancement of bidirectional knowledge production, sharing, and capacity building, establishment of collaboration projects to bridge cultural and political gaps, and to promote high quality research and education programs, which today we can see how this is being done through such workshops as this one. And lastly, foundation of long-term partnerships and strategic relationships. So we hope to mutually help each other grow and learn new things and transfer knowledge between universities, so we can actually bring everyone to a higher level of education. And thank you, that's it for me.
Iris, thank you for this presentation. And now it's time to shift on to the program of the workshop itself. Before starting with the first topic, I would like to turn your attention to the structure of the program. It's pretty long for an online version, but I hope we'll be able to stay together all the time today and tomorrow. The program is composed of several sessions, and after each session or 2 sessions, consecutive sessions, we will make a short break in order that people can stretch their legs, and then we'll continue till the end. I hope you are all familiar with the Zoom technologies, Zoom support technology, which enables an active participation in the workshop. So I would like to just use the function, chat function, and during the presentations and also after the presentation, you can put questions there, and the presenters will be happy to answer your questions when they finish their introductory speeches. This is easier perhaps than to interrupt speakers when they speak online. We will also provide materials which will be presented during the workshops when the workshop is finished, so you can get at the end all the materials presented. And I should say also that the workshop is recorded, and that all the information which will be conveyed different ways will be made available afterwards. First, I will try to contextualize this topic of the workshops. It's the development of curricula, development of teaching programs. I will help myself, I hope, successfully with the PowerPoint presentation, which I hope you will be able to follow. Is the presentation visible?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I will try to contextualize this topic, which I think deserve a bit wider discussion than just to jump on into the issue of study programs creation. In order to do that, I will turn your attention to 4 major trends, which are not a very new one, but they are persistent anyway. It's democratization of education, globalization and internationalization of higher education, knowledge society and economy, and new technologies in education. We'll go through this presentation one by one. So if we start with the first one, the democratization of education. Democratization of education is characterized first and foremost by the opening of universities and as a consequence, massive enrollment of students. If you look at the statistics, you will see that quite a few, or maybe majority of developed countries now have over 50% of younger generation going to tertiary education. And this is an important implication for the program design, in my opinion, because we had to shift in the past, and we still keep doing this, from the programs for elites to programs for students with average abilities. So we must adjust to the population that are coming into our universities. Even more democratization means also making universities and educational processes more inclusive. This means that study programs themselves should be more sensitive to the privileged students and students with special needs. It's important how they enter the programs and how they can really participate actively in the teaching processes themselves. This topic will be addressed especially by one of the sessions in this workshop. This is the first session tomorrow. In addition to these 2 characteristics of democratization, I would like to stress also the third one. It is the participation of stakeholders. which these are students, employers, local communities, maybe some others as well, which do and should participate in curricular design and educational processes. We'll devote one of these sessions in these workshops also to students. They will tell us how they are involved and how they think they should be involved in the study program design and in other activities during the study process. Unfortunately, we haven't opened this workshop for employers' representatives. The democratization of education itself, as a conclusion, requires that we should have student-centered programs focused more on individual capacities and interests as much as possible, as much as the economy of education allows. But it also, as said, requires involvement of stakeholders already in the design phase of the study processes when we design study programs. The other trend is globalization and internationalization of higher education. This can be described in different ways. I would put forward here increasing circulation of knowledge in terms of all knowledge production that is published, which is made available instantly all over the globe. But there is also increasing mobility of staff and students. Universities benchmark and compare to each other and see where their position is. And the universities also cooperate increasingly with each other. In the European context, I think it should be very stressed, especially that we have a so-called European higher education area, which is not an empty space, but more and more structured space, which we know by different achievements, we can say, that have been introduced in the past and are still here. I can mention here the Bologna process, European credit transfer system, European qualification framework, especially Erasmus program, which supports innovation in the field of education and supports mobility. And there will be one session also in this workshop devoted to this issue. There are the new networks of universities. Utopia is one of these networks. There's a lot of discussion on micro-credentials, which is a new issue which could be seen now as a debate and maybe later on as a special institutional arrangement. So it's a lot of things going on, and this requires also internationalization of programs and educational processes. So when we think about creating a new teaching program, we perhaps should have in mind that it should not be a closed program, let's say just for local students and local teachers, but to be opened for this international cooperation. In addition to this, I would like to add here that there are some questions and challenges which we have to face. One of this is culture and language pluralism, which is challenged very much. The question is whether we can keep our languages and cultures untouched, so to speak, when we go international. And you can see that we are using English language now here for all of us in order to understand each other, and this many times is true for students as well. But at the same time, as we know, universities are somehow responsible to maintain and care for their national cultures and languages as well. And there's another question of convergence or keeping diversity? What will happen with this internationalization, especially inside Europe, whether the programs and universities will converge or whether they will keep their diversity or not. This is something to think about perhaps when we talk about these issues as well. Let's move to the third trend, which I describe here as knowledge society and economy, and it can be described in different ways. One way is that we can observe exponential accumulation of knowledge. There is more and more output in terms of articles, books, other kind of knowledge outputs, and it is been for a long time already that we cannot bring all this knowledge into the study program. So it's a special requirement, perhaps, that we have made a shift from comprehensive to more selective programs. And some authors say it's more important to learn how to learn and to be selective and select the appropriate information than to try to grasp everything available. And some of this knowledge perhaps can be also available later on in one's life, and we cannot learn everything during the study if we speak about students. Maybe some responses go into the direction of increasing specialization. We can get more specialized programs when new fields are developed in the field of science. The other description of knowledge society goes in the direction of increasing educational levels. Speaking about this, I can say that when you check statistics, you can see that there is quite a few European or in other developed countries where over 40% of population is already educated on the tertiary level. So that means that there is a lot of knowledge, if you want, intellectual and cultural capital already existing among population, and this reflects also in student population which is coming to our universities. So we must count on this increasing intellectual capital on the side of students and take into account some prior knowledge they are bringing in the school, but not only in the school, at the university as well. Third description of this knowledge society trend can be expressed as increasing knowledge-based competition in the economy. This is what representatives of economy are warning us about, and they and as a result, the study programs and teaching process should be more and more challenge-based, structured in a different way, not that much disciplinary perhaps as it was traditionally, but more problem-focused, in order that we can, or students can acquire better knowledge, that can acquire knowledge that goes across different disciplines and be more successful in solving either work environment or life environment issues. And this also means that we should upgrade knowledge which has been traditionally structured in disciplinary, to upgrade this knowledge with skills, responsibilities, and autonomy. As some definitions of competencies speak about, they are composed of knowledge, skills, responsibilities, and autonomy. This is something that comes from the expectations of the economy, employers, who of course would like to have more and more skillful labor force. And the last description of knowledge society on this transparency speaks about non-linear knowledge circulation and importance of tacit knowledge. It means that knowledge is created at different places, not just at universities and institutes, more and more in development departments of companies and elsewhere. And of course, this knowledge is also important to be somehow brought into the study process, into the study programs. And a lot of this knowledge, which is being used in the production process and also in the life environments, is of a tacit nature. So it's not explicit, it's not written down. So the intention or the desire would be to also bring some of this knowledge into the study process and to make it available to younger generation, to our students. And this is usually possible, best possible, if employers, also local communities, are involved in the curricular design, in the design of study programs, and also in the learning process itself when these programs are carried out. So we can speak about an increasing importance of work-based learning. And let me shift to the last trend which I wanted to put forward. This new technologies in education. Here I mean especially information and communication technologies. What seems quite important for also the design of teaching programs and teaching processes is that this new technology causes a different type of socialization of new generations. We can say that new generations are, in fact, born with mobiles in their cradles. So they are educated quite differently in comparison to the older generations. Older generations had books most of the time in their hands. Younger generation have these new technologies, mobiles, computers, internet, information bases, and so on and so forth. And this is an important factor because the structure of thinking, of teaching and learning has changed quite a lot. And perhaps we can speak about a different kind of mindset among younger generation who is entering educational process at the universities. And we must somehow take this into account when designing our teaching programs and processes. Of course, this new technology also allows and enables different kind of knowledge creation, knowledge packing, if you want, so and knowledge transfer. I can mention here as an example MOOCs, but also already mentioned what we call micro credentials and this types of different packing, if you want, of knowledge, we can then transfer onto the student population, or in which we can invite students to actively develop their knowledge in the study process. So this new technologies, in fact, enable new type of learning, which can be more and more individualized. During the Corona crisis, as we can see, it has been shifted onto online, distant. Some have tried with hybrid types and so on and so forth. But in addition to this, of course, there is a new challenge, special challenge to the universities. It requires a purchase and installment of new equipment, new technologies to be available and to be at disposal of students and staff. And last but not least, I would say it requires also training of teachers. I'm of the generation which is not that young, and I must say that when I observe around that many of my colleagues have difficulties to keep up with this technological development and train him or herself to be able to use it in a proper way. This is, in fact, what I wanted to say for the introduction to this workshop and for the discussion on the more core issues which we will deal with in the next sessions. So I would like to stop with slide sharing here and see whether there are some questions already you would like to pose. We have some time now for the discussion before the next introduction will be made. Maybe somebody would like to enter the discussion orally.
I can ask a question, which is really interesting. I haven't seen this presentation before, but how do you envision maybe the training of teachers to go or happen? You know, since everything has been already digitalized and a lot of the teachers didn't have the time to do this, and supposedly other processes will be as fast as this one, you know, because of the needs of the environment. What strategies do you think would be practical, maybe most practical, most efficient in training the staff and teachers for this?
Difficult to say, but in one way to answer this question is, of course, that everybody is expected to follow the novelty scheme herself. This is part of the teaching profession, of course, and every professional, in fact, in other fields as well, is supposed to be active in acquiring new knowledge and updating all the information his work is based on. But of course, this is perhaps not enough. And I would like to say that at the University of Ljubljana, there's a special department which organizes quite a lot of trainings for teachers permanently. And as far as I remember, when I was in the rector's office, there was a great interest, high interest of teachers to really participate in those training programs, either in one or the other field. It was a lot of trainings in pedagogical field of the pedagogics, but also informatics and other fields. And so I think every university more or less has such a department and offers the possibility to their employees to follow the novelties this way. Okay, I think there's not much interest. Yeah, Rosette would like to enter, please. Demute yourself, please.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Talking of digital readiness, perhaps I'm not the best example of that one too, but what I was wondering, Ivan, is, well, all these initiatives and the innovative, let's say, experiments for education that we ask from our teachers, and from the academic staff. In our university, we often have the feeling that despite the incentives that are given for these kind of projects and also the material support that we try to give them, a teacher is often, let's say, by nature, a little bit afraid of engaging in these kind of innovations, not so much because he or she is not interested or wouldn't like to proceed with this, but yeah, it is of course a very time-consuming process often to adapt all the material, to engage in new formats, etc. And we will talk about this, I think, in the coming sessions, also in this seminar. But we often have the feeling that, well, the recognition of this type of activities is, as for the career development and the scores that the teacher receives from the higher authorities, there is more like, let's say, importance given to the output related to research and innovation activities than to, yeah, let's say, their progress in pedagogical approach of the students. Is it a feeling that you share with me in Ljubljana, or is it something that is not the case in your university?
Thank you, Rosette, for this question. I think you can speak for Ljubljana as much as for your university. I should say that this debate here is quite frequent, namely that most of so-called desirable outputs on the side of researchers, teachers, is research output, publications, whatever, best publications in best journals, and so on and so forth. This is what really counts most. And many people many times warn that this is perhaps one-sided career system if it puts so much accent on research output only, because let's say, transfer of knowledge onto students, or better, development of knowledge together with students, is of equal importance, and it's really a basic and primary function of the university. And there are requirements here as well to make a better balance between, let's say, teaching and research in this case. So thank you. I think you pointed at the question which is being discussed elsewhere as well, rightly. Thank you. I think it's now time, if there is no other participants who would like to enter now, to shift to the next presentation. We'll save some time now, 5 minutes, for the next presenter, and I would like to invite now Joe Angury from the University of Warwick. Professor Angury is Academic Director of Education and Internationalization at Warwick, and she's been very active in Utopia in the work package 2 when we are dealing with the teaching, study issues and innovation in this field. Joe, may I just ask you to start with your presentation, and you can present yourself even better than I did.
Thank you, Ivan. Thank you all, and I'm really sorry I was late. Before I start, and thank you for the kind introduction, I want to also present my co-author and very close partner in crime and the Utopia journey, Rosette Sayers. We are going to deliver our talk together, and Rosette is the coordinator of our package and also has a senior advisor role at VUB, and I think it's the center of all operations for WP2, and also a very experienced colleague in what we're going to discuss today and the principles that we're trying to apply with the EUTOPIA curriculum. So I'm going to attempt to share my screen. My internet is sort of playing up a little bit today, so I'm hoping it'll be all right. And Rosette and I are going to do a double act both today and tomorrow. We really apologize for that, but that's how we learn, and we thoroughly enjoy doing this. We hope that you will also learn and enjoy it. We are also intending to continue the conversations we start today, tomorrow, and sort of, so in a sense, we're kind of trying to make a connection between the framework and the principles that we'll be discussing today, and go in more depth tomorrow. So we will aim to talk for about 35 minutes, and then have about 5 minutes for questions-ish. Maybe even 10 minutes for question, although I very, very much doubt it. But what we promised ourselves is that if we eat our time today, we're going to make sure we have more time tomorrow. So in a sense, we're going to use the 2 slots that we were very generously given to give you a lot of information and hopefully create sort of a kind of a holistic understanding of what we do and use EUTOPIA as an example. So, okay, so let me see if I can make this work. So you can see the slides, right?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, very good. And if I do this, can you still see the slides? Because sometimes it drops.
Yeah, it goes fine.
So, and you see me turning the slides now?
Yeah.
Okay, but I lost the presentation mode. Okay. Fine. So, okay, so we're going to talk mainly about active learning, which is the principles very much sort of is the core frame, if you want, of the specific, both the sort of overall principles, but also the methodology that we're applying. And what I think we both believe in terms of curriculum design, whether we talk about sort of the work we do in the context of EUTOPIA, but we've all been doing active learning in some way or another in all the curriculum design work that we've been doing over the years, and sort of in different contexts. So the principles apply across. So I won't be able to see any questions, but I don't know if you use the chat. I will try and monitor. And if there are any questions, please, or any comments, we can see how we could interact and take them on board. So, sorry. So I'm going to talk about the sort of start about why active learning, and move on to what active learning is sort of good for, and active learning, and then move on to the principles of active learning. And Rosette is going to then say a few words on implementation and some of the pitfalls, because it's not it will all sound wonderful, but it's not all very easy. So when we actually have a need for curriculum innovation, and there is a need for curriculum innovation often because we actually have the world around us changes very fast, as we all know, and we, through the development in various research areas, we actually see both the foci, but also interests to change, and of course our curricula are living organisms, so we need to refresh, and we need to continue adapting, and we often have the indication, both in terms of what we see from our university's research activity and societal change, the demands from the market, the interest of the students, that we actually need our curricula to change and to grow. And this is very important, already part of what in a sense active learning can give us, because we're going to say a little bit more when we talk about what active learning is, but involving and being adaptable and working with the students and meeting student demand is one of the main and fundamental principles there. So we know that curriculum innovation is necessary. We have the fast-paced world changing, we have new development, But we also have opportunities for growth, and curriculum growth is fascinating. So I've been doing curriculum design all my academic career, and it is a wonderful space for creativity, and particularly often we actually have opportunities in trans-institutional collaboration, again, to broaden and expand curricula and bring in new perspectives, because of course all our in any institution in the world we actually have finite resources. Once we actually have the benefits of collaboration and the benefits of alliances and the benefits of synergies, then of course that is an opportunity for opening up curricula and growing curricula. Internationalization, and of course this has taken different parts, is both an opportunity and a sort of need that curricula have to respond, because for many, if not most institutions, they giving students a global orientation and graduate attributes along the lines of global citizenship are core priorities. And of course, internationalization and the opportunity to experience a sort of global mobile environment has been one of the fundamental principles of the European education policy and strategy of the years. Expanding curricula is very important for improving the learning experience and the learning journey of the student, and is often a necessity because, of course, we need to diversify our pedagogic offering for responding to student feedback, and of course, in order to maintain the portfolio, but also maintain the excellence in teaching and learning, of course, involves having curricula that are timely and relevant and benefit from the latest development and so on. And that's, of course, is part of also recruitment and sort of growth strategies for an institution. And whatever is the reason why we need to change, to refresh, to design curricula, active learning is really very important, and is also a way that in my view and from my experience, we could actually engage and give, train our students for what is the most important, which is the mindset and the orientation and the development of skills and learning experiences that would go beyond developing the knowledge of the subject area, which of course is very important, but we know will change. And enables them to become both global citizens if we operate in this international environment, but also gives them this mindset of learning to learn, which that's what I wanted my students to have throughout my career, to have this sort of mindset, because the world is changing. Our students today will be dealing with problems that we don't know. We've seen the disruption. The 21st century is a very disruptive environment. It is really important, in my view, to train for a mindset, to train for developing skills, to train beyond the immediate. And in my view, the only way to achieve that is by a student-centered active learning approach. And student-centeredness, and so on, there's nothing new, right? So we talk many times about that as if we invented this and it is, oh my God, it's a fantastic idea. It really isn't. And I'm sure when Rosette takes the floor, she will say something, well, in the 70s, I tried this and I would, you know, in a sense, it was wonderful and so on. And the question is, of course, why don't we capitalize on all this wonderful experience of colleagues who've actually saw the need for much more mobilizing and putting the student in the driving seat for many years, and we're still having those conversations. So what I'm going to talk about is I strongly believe in, and I've seen it working, and it's really very good. And we had so much crammed in for today that I didn't have space to have one of my students who is involved in some of the curricula that I've designed for my institution to talk to you about how they feel. But also, from the start, I want to say that we need to keep in mind that we know this is really very good, but the question is, why haven't we translated to reality yet? Why are we still talking about this? So active learning, the emphasis on application, apply theory to practice. This is fundamental, and it's a sort of broad understanding of applied theory to practice, whatever is the discipline. And the important point is that from the start, students are encouraged and supported to apply and to make a connection between what they learn and the application and the relevance with real world problems or with the world around us. It is a format that is very much put a lot of agency in the student's hands and aims to give ownership to the student, to take ownership of their learning experience. And therefore, it is a bridge between the kind of traditional transmission model where what I tell my students is that if you come in my class because you think that I have this superhuman capacity of storing all this information in my head, actually Google Scholar can do a much better job. But what I can do is to support, navigate, help, facilitate the reading of the information, the application of knowledge, the sort of translating this knowledge into new knowledge and so on. So the active learning is the process of moving from a transmission model to a much more active, as obviously it's the name says, relationship and co-ownership of the experience. So this concept of co-ownership and co-creation is fundamental. So instead of the teacher, the lecturer, the leader, module leader, whatever we call it in the different systems, being in control of the agenda, we open the floor and we enable the student to bring in their own interests, their own questions, their own creativity, and so on. And I can talk and take questions about how exactly we do that. But because, you know, in a sense, one thing that I deeply dislike is all those things to stay at the level of very nice big words and then never translate into fundamentally what it means. And they kind of bringing the student in, I've seen it working, and I work with students on all levels, from the design of the program and program outcomes all the way to allowing students to take ownership of assessment, designing the questions and the projects that the students are working on and so on. This, of course, has implications about the scaffolding that needs to be in place and the sort of the architecture of the degrees. But the principle is that it is a partnership. Okay, and we work with our students in a partnership relationship, and we learn together. That's something that I fundamentally and strongly believe in, and I thoroughly enjoy doing it and working with students from first year undergraduate students all the way to postdocs. An active learning approach is very much driven and responds and addresses developments in research and society, and that's why it is a vehicle, a mechanism for curriculum enrichment and curriculum development, as I said from the start. And because we know that societies address complex problems, active learning is also a bridge, is a way to create interdisciplinarity within disciplinary spaces. Now, interdisciplinarity is another one of my things, because at the moment everybody talks about interdisciplinarity. And in a sense, we've also moralized it as a good thing. So in a sense, when I work for different research councils and so on, we often have conversations about saying, oh, this is interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary or transdisciplinary. And everybody knows that this is a good thing. I think we really, this is a bit superficial. We need to think what it is that we mean and why this is good and how it needs to happen. And this comes from someone who has been interdisciplinary in all my life for all my research, but it's not the means to an end, right? We need interdisciplinarity. We operate in institutions that are very discipline-based. There is a need for discipline training. There's a lot of interdisciplinarity in the disciplines, okay? That's also very important. If we want to create those spaces to bring students from different backgrounds together, this is, yes, absolutely fundamentally important, but it needs to be built in a program that serves the principles of coherence for the overall outcomes. And active learning is definitely a way to be able to actually do that in the context of a module, a unit, or sort of the micro unit, whatever is actually called in different education systems. So what we're trying to show here is how we move and how we actually move from learning as sort of as a kind of from a directive type of learning where I control and I sort of have this sort of talking at the students or having this monodirectional way to having a much more of a holistic approach, where I want to have an approach to learning which enables my students to become independent, to use guidance, but to use guidance in the principle of developing understanding and depth and engagement and being hands-on. Benefit from peer learning is really important. We have excellent students in class and we spend a lot of time trying to keep them quiet. I never understood why that's the case. And in a sense, we have a wonderful resource with the students in class. And in a sense, the principle of active learning is that we actually create the conditions that students learn from peers and they work with peers and so on. And of course, it is critical learning. And what we're seeing around us is the deep need for critical learning. Now, critical thinking is not new. If we go back to Socrates and Plato and the academia and so on, we will find that quite a lot has been covered. But again, we need to think, what are the formats that critical learning takes, and the critical reading and allowing and enabling and empowering, because it is a process of empowerment, active learning, what it is that we need to have in place for our students to be able to actually have this critical learning experience. I can talk for about 10 days for any of those things, and I think they're so fundamental for the quality of the education experience. And when I talk to my students, what I say is that in 2020, soon 2021, for all of us, what I want when we are in a sort of face-to-face or synchronous content is much more than me talking at the students. It's basically us actively working together and learning together, and having much more of a workshop approach to the curriculum. This takes very different formats, and I've already spoken about the role of the student, and the difference is the sort of move from a passive to active, to being agentive, to actually take ownership of the path. And that also translates into the way and the architecture of the units that constitute one curriculum. So the modules or the units or the courses, whatever they're called, the way we assessment is very important, that active learning can also involve extra or non-academic partners, feeding in either by setting the challenges or by opening up the translation of theories in different professional environments, and enabling the students to actually bridge and make those connections between theory and practice. Of course, this has huge implications for employability and for lifelong learning and so on, but I'm not talking about that at the moment. It's actually a very important format, the design and the architecture, to enable the student to actually make these connections. And this is what some of the bullet points that you see on the slide actually attempt to capture. The specific formats like problem solving and challenge-based learning, which I personally believe in a lot, are exactly doing that. They enable to go beyond linearity, establish a research in the curriculum from the start. I believe hugely in undergraduate research. I think this is fundamental as a sort of as the tool and the mechanism and the way to enable and empower the students to develop analytical skills, critical thinking, have a hands-on approach. And of course, then it means that we also have a number of other formats that can take part in the units that we design. And that's particularly with the technology we have. We can use anything from e-gaming to creating ways to design with the students, and often that can be led by the students themselves, ways to actually translate what is happening in the curriculum in ways that could actually be part of the assessment or the learning. The concept of co-creating this is actually what is a recurrent pattern. Right? So in a sense, the words that I've been using is very much around the partnership, is around the co-creation, is around changing the footing from the ex-cathedra or cathedra, where we actually keep or retain the kind of this linear asymmetry to opening up the curriculum and creating space in the curriculum from day one for the student to bring in their interests. We know there is vast literature on the benefits of making those connections between student interests and what's happening in class. What I've seen times and again is students finding ways to connect hobbies, interests, readings with what is happening in the curriculum from term one, year one, and then that leading to a career path, that leading to future work and so on. But of course, it takes scaffolding and it takes program architecture that would allow the students to transcend those sort of barriers and those sort of siloed type of way of thinking, that this is what I do when I have fun, this is what I do when I learn. What I really want is students who would actually design projects on what they're passionate about, what they are interested in, and so on. And we can enable them, and active learning is the way to do that. And that's what we're also doing with the EUTOPIA curricula. This is one example, and I'm almost bang on my time, and so I will soon pass on to Rosette. This is just one example, following from what I just said, transcending boundaries, one experimentation, which started as a Sprinter program. Sprinter because it was designed to enable students from Warwick and students from Monash to work together, and you know that our summer is winter in Australia and the other way around. So we established our concept of a Sprinter school, which was on multilingualism. And what we wanted to do with that was to bring students interested in issues around multilingualism and diversity. I'm not going to talk about content, to work together across levels. So that involved undergraduate students all the way to postdocs, working in teams around challenges and questions that were co-designed with non-academic partners in different geographical locations. The concept of that was not that the PhD student would supervise the undergraduate students, right? So we were not creating the usual sort of pyramid there or the usual hierarchy. What we were doing was to create teams that would have different skills and would have different experiences as well, to come together and co-design projects that would be in their area of interest. And it was an experiment that we were biting our nails a little bit, because in a sense that was challenging pretty much everything in the establishment, and it worked fantastically well. And the amount and the quality of work that was produced in 3-4 days, that those students came together, of course, with preparation before and debrief after and so on. You can see, if you're interested in what the quality of what those student groups produced, which was captured in blogs that they had to produce on the basis of data that they had to collect, and the level that they've reached in a 1 week intensive face-to-face was really absolutely fascinating, and gave me a lot of drive and motivation to continue challenging this sort of fragmentation, which of course is necessary as a sort of tool for allowing us to give us the time and the space to work with our students, to develop the skills and the time to reflect and the time to learn and the time to fail and start again, because it's really important that this is protected and this is happening. But the principle of engaging and actively engaging the learner and giving ownership is one that I think is the best and the only, as far as I can see, way to give the students the graduate attribute we want to have, but also in effect make sure that they have fun and they enjoy the learning and they're engaged and they make the most of the degree and they take opportunities in the co-curricular space and so on. So we know that engaged students are the students who benefit the most, and I cannot see how engagement can happen outside the context of the principles of active learning in the form that it could take, depending, of course, on the discipline and the curriculum that colleagues would have to work with. So that's all for me. I'm passing on to Rosette to pick up on, okay, that's all wonderful. Why this rosy picture is not everybody's reality, what may be in the way, and hopefully also how we could make it there.
Thanks, Joe, and yes, hello to everybody in the seminar. Very pleased to cooperate with Joe on this one, especially my background as a vice director for education. Triggered, of course, my interest for these kind of initiatives and this type of curriculum innovation. I can reassure you all and Joe specifically that I'm not going to talk about the 70s today, but we will keep it to more recent experiences. But nevertheless, VUB, Warwick, but also the other partner universities in the Utopia Alliance, they all have a rather long experience related to the introduction of these kind of methods. And that's one of the reasons, in fact, that was, or one of the common characteristics that was very important for working and developing the educational model that we will tell you about tomorrow. So, and it is therefore also, I think, interesting that we dare to look in a critical way at this experience and try to also identify what I call the pitfalls or the disadvantages of the system, or the barriers that the system is confronted with, and that might endanger in fact the positive overall outcome on motivation of students and teachers that we are all convinced of, that this technique is bringing along. So let's look at the more typical caveats or pitfalls that arise when we look at the experience that we have with these methods. And I'm in fact the information that I have on this has been updated a few months ago, in fact, when we did a survey within VUB of a number of program directors across disciplines that looked back at, let's say, 10 or even 20 years of experience with the introduction of curriculum innovation through active learning formats. And in fact, all the disadvantage or the frustrations that sometimes are related to the introduction of these techniques are almost always associated with the little word "to," but "to" with 2 O's. Yeah, there's too much of things, and that can affect students, that can affect teaching staff, that can affect the program development and the balance that we have to find in the curriculum development across disciplines, and that can also be related to very practical things like occupation of infrastructure. So let's look at the students first, and this also means critically auto-reflection of the teachers confronted with these students in an active learning format. Because often what teachers do, especially when they start experimenting with active learning, they organize a lot of supplementary work for the students related to organizing themselves in teams, for dealing with cases, for preparing reports, for doing assignments, often also taking contacts with stakeholders outside academia. All this is very exciting, but it is also time-consuming. And if we then not take measures to compensate the time that is spent on these active learning sessions and meetings that the students have to organize, and we just go on with also at the same time teaching in the traditional way all the things that we want to teach, and that we think the concepts are important for the students, and we just accumulate, in fact, the new approach with the traditional ex cathedra teaching and the time that this is taking for the students to prepare it and to to understand it, then we are of course creating an overload, and this might in fact discourage the student, especially when he or she is confronted with several types of active learning within his program in a certain moment in time in the educational pattern. And the same goes, I have to say, which is perhaps even sometimes more creating more frustration, is when we look at assessment of all what is going on in a course, because of course when you are combining active activity of the student with more passive absorption of learning material, then you also have to be ready, I think, as a teacher, to appreciate, to acknowledge the work that has been done by the student during the semester. And this then has to lead to or result into less stringent and other expectations at the other levels of your course. So in fact, when your student is doing work during the term or the semester, then of course this has to be reflected in less formal assessment moments during, let's say, the specific period the examinations are situated in. So the student then should be enabled to have more time for other courses during the formal examination period, and this is then of course combined with the results that he has or the work that he has done during the year. And then let's look at the teachers. If we're talking about overload, this is perhaps a very sensitive issue, especially in, as Joe already mentioned, these disruptive times. But well, these disruptive times are now associated with the COVID pandemic, but there are in fact decennia behind us now that we have been increasing the workload because of, as Ivan also mentioned, the democratization of the system, the increase in number of students, but also the increase in the effort that we take for engaging ourselves for research and innovation activities. So workload is a very sensitive issue, and what we often, I think the mistake that we often make in implementing or in trying to implement active learning methods is that we do not take into account the time that is needed for preparing this for the staff. And then I am not talking about just, let's say, updating the course material or linking the topics in the course with what is happening in society or the latest developments in the discipline or in the science that you are related to, but it is more than that, of course. Active learning comes with a significant complementary investment in time and resources allocated to course preparation, and this is especially true, I think, for the design phase. During which the learning material has to be adapted, but also during which the integration of contacts with stakeholders, of cases, of assignments, and even the introduction of new assessment methods has to be reflected on. And it doesn't stop there, because later on, during the actual implementation of active learning, you are, of course, also confronted with very time-consuming elements like organizing parallel groups, teams of students taking, let's say, discussions, following up these discussions, giving feedback to your students, etc., etc. So the implementation also is very time-consuming for the teacher. And we observed in our university that in disciplines where there are lots of students, that often very beautiful initiatives that were taken up with a lot of drive and interest and motivation as from the teacher side, they are given up after a few years, because the follow-up, the sustainability of this approach is endangered by the increasing time that teachers have to invest in this. So this is a very important fact, I think, as for the long-term success of using this pedagogical approach. A third factor is then related to, I'm in implementation already, Joe, and in fact, it's the former slide that I still need. Yeah. As for curriculum, also there we have to be careful, because often, of course, active learning methods are like a spontaneous, gradual action that comes bottom up from the teacher that is experimenting with new methods. And this often then leads to a big disequilibrium. In some programs, a lot of activity is going on, and a lot of teachers adapt these methods for working with their students. And in other disciplines, the format is practically non-existent. And of course, this can then lead to a very big disequilibrium, not only within the programs, but also across the programs, as for, let's say, the general structure of the curriculum in a university. In the cases where there are, in fact, a multitude of teachers that are working with this method, an interesting solution that we observed in talking with the program directors is that it is a very good idea to organize a type of joint activities between learners, teachers that like to apply active learning. It is a good idea to share cases or assignments that in fact cover the complementary aspects of a case, and can be organized by, let's say, 2 or 3 or even 4 teachers using the same case to, in fact, illustrate the different dimensions of what they are teaching in a case, in a project, or in an assignment. And this then leads to saving time for the teachers, because they can cooperate on organizing the feedback, and they can cooperate in the assessment of all this activity. But it is also time consuming for the student, because then the reports, the time they need for teamwork, for meeting with other students, for meeting with stakeholders, then can also be concentrated and be used in a more rational way. Last but not least, but well, this is something we all know, and I'm not an architect or I'm not an engineer that can solve all this, but active learning is a notorious consumer of space, not only in our agendas, but also in reality, in the context of our institutions. For organizing active learning, you need to enable parallel sessions where students are working in group, or are able to contact peers, are able to contact their teachers and external stakeholders, and where they are also supported by the learning platforms or the digital tools that they need for connecting. And of course, this leads to the limits of our capacity at infrastructural level, but also often to the limits of our budgets for installing this type of classrooms and equipment. And this brings us then, I think, to the last slide that then indeed talks about implementation. And I would like to compare I'm an economist by training, and I would like to compare the implementation, or the good implementation, the conditions for good implementation of active learning with the phases of any kind of innovative business development. It follows, in fact, the same pattern, and it has to observe the same sequence of investment phases if you want to do it in the right way. First, of course, you need a period where there is that is called in investment literature the seed money phase, and you have to allow and to give incentives for trying out new things, for experiments, and this is often something that we do in our universities. And we have separate budgets to give some small incentives for our teachers or for researchers that want to try out a new pedagogical approach and whatever it means to do a little experiments with that, to buy software or to invest a little bit in a teaching assistant that can help out with the new material or whatever. So this is something we often do. The thing that we often tend to neglect, and this is really very dangerous for the sustainability of the system, that is the second phase. The second phase is then what we call in project development the venture capital phase. And this means that in fact you are preparing, you have been more or less pleased with the experimental phase. You saw a lot of potential in your innovative approach. You saw a lot of appreciation of your fellow teachers and of the students. And now you want, in fact, to really implement this, and you have to prepare for this. You have to prepare for this in many ways. There is, of course, the design of the new material. There is getting acquainted, perhaps, with digital support to allow you to reach out to parallel groups, to reach out to stakeholders, to learn about the platforms that you can use for co-creation between learner and students, etc. All these things have to be prepared, and it doesn't stop there, because Igor also talked about the need for professional for acquiring new professional skills to do all this, and to do the guidance also of the teams and organize the feedback in a proper way and all these things. Well, it is time consuming, and that's why, for example, at VUB, we are now trying to convince the academic authorities to introduce a type of sabbaticals that is no longer the monopoly of research and innovative things in expanding, let's say, our knowledge, but also sabbaticals, in fact, that can be used time out as it is for preparing pedagogical innovations and new approach of the learning process. So we hope that this will be successful and that we will get these funds and these concepts in place. I think I have more or less to round up, and I was also thinking now of the last phase after, of course, a successful preparation we can use if our teachers and students are really comfortable with these new techniques, and if they see and feel the impact, the increased motivation that is caused by using them, then I think we can take it a little bit further, and we can use it in international projects like Utopia, and it can really create a very positive outreach, I think, for our universities and our role that we have as teachers and learners in today's society. Thank you very much. And of course, just like Joe indicated, open for questions.
Thank you, Rosette, and thank you, Joe, for this very dynamic introduction to the topic. I'm sorry, Rosette, I didn't introduce you before. Rosette
no problem.
is Professor Emeritus from Vrije Universiteit Brussels, one of the partners of Utopia. As she said, an expert in entrepreneurship, organizational studies, economics, and so on. And very active now in the Utopia in designing novelties in the educational field. So
thank you, Ivan. No problem.
I'm afraid we have run out of time, but maybe there are some questions in place.
There is one question in the chat, but you can also write the answers down if that's not a problem when you see those.
Will you read this question, Iris, if you can help us?
Joe saw it, so Joe can do it.
Yeah, I can actually read and respond as well. So the question is how often we change the curriculum and who is involved in designing curricula. I think these are very good questions, very broad questions. How often we change the curriculum, I think it depends. In my view, we change the curriculum all the time. It's a living organism. But of course, the level of change depends, right? So in a sense, one is to change at the level of the components that make the unit, whatever we call it, module, course, and so on. And then also respond to that change without losing the bigger picture, the program level picture, and making both adaptations, but also deeper changes and deeper renewals. So I think it's not one set path. I think curriculum that are designed on active pedagogies and active principles have a continuous evolution. So all the programs that I've been involved in, which I've designed, there is a change, and working with students, this change range from, of course, modules change or units change, but also we introduce new things, we change the shape, and we work with students in that. And this is really a absolutely fascinating process to do, and of course is subject to all the very important issues that Rosette raised at the very end in terms of the sustainability of this approach. Who is involved in designing the curriculum? The whole team, in my view, and in my world, that's also the whole team is all the core stakeholders. My experience and sort of the work, the way I worked also with colleagues outside my own institution is very much that it cannot be a top-down. I don't believe in top-down, right? Because very big scale projects, see Bologna, cannot work unless there is a buy-in. So it's fundamental that the lecturers, tutors, teachers, module leaders, whatever we call them, and the students and whoever else is a partner, it's a collective, it's a collaborative, it's a partnership. It has to be something that we all see the value added. It's something that we have to want to do, because and it's something that we also need to make sure that we have the same language, we talk about the same thing. And therefore, we then find also ways to use the very good experience that there are in teams, disciplinary teams, in design this. For active learning pedagogies, there is a need for a front loading. So the design is a very intensive stage, and it is really important that everybody is involved in that. And of course, it doesn't mean that, in a sense, you can have curricula where you don't need to have all your modules to be problem solving or something. But I think it's very important that we see the program level. The students have an experience, that it is a holistic experience. We often get very fragmented and we don't connect. So I very much have worked with colleagues in my institution and also in other institutions, supporting them in curriculum design and development, in actually getting this bigger picture, getting this sort of overall student journey. So we can talk much more about those questions, but in a sense, it is really important that everybody is involved. That doesn't mean that we take either one method or one principle and we all do the same, right? Because I've also seen that, and this is not, so it's not that, oh, flip classroom, let's everybody flip everything. I mean, that's not active learning, right? That's not good pedagogy. So good pedagogy in good pedagogy, there is a place for everything. There is a place for ex-cathedra teaching, but this needs to be part of an active ecosystem where the principle is that the learner is agentive, is active, is engaged, is involved, and so I want to pass on to Rosette. I don't want to continue talking, but Petra, very happy to talk.
Yeah, it's okay. Thank you so much. I know that we will have plenty of time for discussion, so I just, as I said, thank you.
Okay, thank you, both of you. Once again, I think it's time to make a short break. If you want to keep with our schedule, it's only 5 minutes. We will be back in 5 minutes then. So stretch your legs and take a bit of rest. Thank you for now and see you very soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Joe, we can discuss now. So I'm joking.
Yeah, definitely we can.
No, but actually the reason why I really ask this, because I really find this interesting, but it's a little bit technical question as well, how to do it and how often to do it, because it's a process.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can't do it on your own, right?
Yes, of course not. Yeah, but anyway, take a break, and it was lovely to hear you anyway.
No, it's all right. I'm very happy to continue talking, and this is I want to pass on back to Rosette, because this is where my frustration is, right? I mean, I think when I hear Rosette talking about some of the work that you were doing in the 70s, and I'm going back, it's so fascinating. Why we're not doing this today?
Yeah,
and it is exactly what Rosette is saying. There is so much good initiative that is never being scaled up. And so we are reinventing the wheel again and again, instead of capitalizing on this good experience and developing it further. We are still at the level of experimenting. We put a little bit of seed funding, but there is never the kind of level of capital to take that further. So we will continue doing the same thing. So in 2040, we will say, oh, in 2020, you see what I'm saying? In a sense, it sort of goes round about.
Yeah, it's true.
It was in fact, thank you, Joe. It was in fact so, well, I was a vice director between 2000 and 2008, like 2 terms for our rector at that time. And then I switched to the university council, to the rectors conference in Belgium. So working for all the Belgian universities and closely with the rectors, of course. And then when I came at pension age, I returned to VUB for participating in this really very tempting Utopia project, and talking again with the program directors that in fact I hadn't seen for 10 years. It was so frustrating that some of the real good initiatives that we had seen in the 90s and even before that, and that were supported at central level, they were abandoned because teachers, although they were perfectly motivated people, they just couldn't keep up with it. It was too much, and not because these are lazy people or not fully convinced of the positive aspects of these things, but they really couldn't cope. And it was often, I'm sorry to say, in the humanities that we couldn't cope, because the number of students is the number of students and the workload that are highly correlated with each other, and that is really a pity to see this. And that's why I'm so insisting on, it's not just incentive that we have to give. We need to think about how to make it sustainable and to keep up the efforts of everybody that is really engaging for this.
I completely agree with you, Rosetta. And I also think that the numbers and all the bureaucratic work that we have at the moment also kills this innovative ways of teaching and everything else.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it is absolutely frustrating, and it's really frustrating because one thing that needs to happen top down is investment. And you see it, and you see that those things happen because of the drive and the enthusiasm of the Rosettes and the Joes and the Petras of the world and so on. But then, of course, someone leaves an institution or their position and so on, and and it's
okay. Ivan is back, so we need to stop.
All right, we'll wait.
It was nice to discuss.
It's nice that discussion has started and it's going on.
Yeah.
Our schedule says that we have
Yeah.
to go forward.
Yeah.
I hope we have Božidar Grigic with us.
Yes,
Yeah,
hello, I'm here.
I see him. He comes from the Center of the Republic of Slovenia for Mobility and EU Education and Training Programs, a long name for an institution which manages with, let's say, European money, Erasmus money, and maybe some other funds as well. And Božidar will tell us how those who start thinking or who's about new programs, about renovation of programs, can potentially use some EU sources for that. And as Rosette mentioned before, we many times need some resources in order to start some innovations, reforms, and new initiatives. Božidar, the floor is yours now, please.
Thank you very much, Ivan, and thank you for the invitation. I'll try to share my presentation now with you. Just give me a few seconds. I believe you should see it now.
Yes, it's okay.
Good, thank you. So as Ivan already introduced me, I come from CMIPIUS, which is in a main way the national agency in Slovenia for Erasmus Plus program. I'm head of higher education field here, so meaning I'm coordinating all the activities that are going on for the higher education field. As a national agency for Erasmus, majority of our main activities are focused, of course, on the managing the Erasmus Plus program in Slovenia. So for all these centralized actions that I will present a little bit later. We are also coordinating CEPUS program and different bilateral agreements that we have on a national level with other countries. We're also running the initiative Study in Slovenia, for which the main objective is to promote the study opportunities for international students. And we are also coordinating ERAXIS, which is in majority focusing on researchers and academic staff. We're also a member of Academic Cooperation Association, where we are dealing with different topics on a higher education level, connected to also all the European financial mechanisms. A little bit of navigation of today's presentation. What I will try to present are some Erasmus Plus opportunities, which in a given situation is kind of an ungrateful task to do because as many of you might know, the current program is now finalizing and the next year is coming the new generation of Erasmus Plus program. But unfortunately, there are not still a lot of detailed information known how it will be run, but I'll talk more about it later. And I also prepared some relevant issues for Alliance, such as European University, to tackle that we might encounter during our work. So Erasmus Plus 2021 to 27, what do we know so far? Well, I always like to start by a kind of a joke, which was one of the bets that we had here at the national agencies. Will Erasmus keep the plus or not? And I can now tell you that we are keeping the plus. So the brand continues. What we also found out just recently is that the European Parliament approved the budget. So the new program will have 23.4 billion euros, which compared to current program that had 14.7 billion is almost 160% altogether of the current program, which is, of course, a nice increase for the future. As some of you might also know, is that in the spring you had to give in your ECE accreditations applications. The results are not out yet, but we are expecting them in December, hopefully. And when it comes to the creation of new generation of Erasmus+, European Commission, also with the national agencies, we all stick to the, let's say, main idea, which is evolution, not revolution. So basically meaning that the key actions, the main logic, the activities are not changing. We're just improving them where they need to be improved, which was found out in the last 7 years. Also, another promise and something that European Commission is working hard on is that there will be more alignment with other financial mechanisms such as Horizon, European Social Fund, and others. So the purpose of Erasmus is staying the same, which is supporting the educational, professional, and personal development of people in education, training, youth, and sport in Europe and beyond, thereby contributing to sustainable growth, jobs, and social cohesion, and to strengthening European identity. As mentioned, also the structure remains, which meaning we will still have key action 1, which is dealing with mobility of individuals. These actions are decentralized, meaning so that the national agencies are managing them. So for you, that means that you're applying directly to national agency in your country. Then we have key action 2, where we are dealing with cooperation for innovation and the exchange of good practices, meaning projects. Part of these activities are decentralized and part of these activities are centralized, which means they are run by Central European Commission agencies. So you're applying directly to the European Commission. The key action 3 is supporting the policy reform, and these activities are also centralized. And then we also have the Jean Monnet activities, which are also centralized, meaning you have to apply to the European Commission directly. The priorities that Erasmus Plus will be tackling in the next 7 years are, of course, inclusion and diversity. This is one of the big ones. Digital transformations. This goes for, as in the documentation and also the, for example, virtual mobilities and so on. Participation in democratic life. And of course, another big one is sustainability, environmental and climate goals. Now going maybe a little bit more into the key actions. So I cannot really, give you advice to which activity exactly you can apply if you're trying to do some updates on your curricula or on your programs, or you want to start a new one, because there are different actions that you can use for different types of activities. For example, if you're still looking for partners or you have a partner that you want to visit to discuss something more concretely and see how it's working, you can do mobility. So for you, it will be then to use the mobility project in higher education, for example. One of such are the key action 1, mobility projects in higher education between program countries. And the novelties that are coming for the new programs is, one of them is international dimension, meaning that also in KO103 that you might know now, will be in the future K131. And you can also then cooperate with partner countries, meaning countries outside of the European Union. This, of course, will be limited by the budget. So, for example, if you get in the call 2021, 200,000 euros, you may spend, for example, let's say 20,000 for cooperation with partner countries and the rest with the program countries. The exact cap or the percentage with limitation is not known yet, but we know that it will be there. There will be also a lot of different financial supports for inclusion of participants with fewer opportunities. This will also depend on the national priorities, definitions, and so on. There will be also additional financial supports, for example, for green traveling, so focusing on sustainable and green dimension. As mentioned before, digitalization, so the European student card is coming, Erasmus without papers, so all the bureaucracy won't have to be printed out anymore, but it will be all digital, signed digitally, the learning agreements, so all these documents will be digital. And also what they are promising are improved tools. So one entry point, no more different tools for different programs, projects, but one. And from there you can manage, you can apply, you can manage the project, and you can also report. The eligible activities in the mobility project, we will continue with the staff mobilities for training or for teaching, and with student mobilities for study or practical training. But what is coming as a new or old new, so we used to have it in the lifelong program, and now it's coming back, are intensive programs, with one difference, that they would be blended intensive programs, which mean part virtual, part physical. And of course, another addition are the virtual and blended mobilities. What will stay under KA1 are mobility projects in higher education between program and partner countries. The sad news is that there is no call in 2021. So we will have a gap year because the negotiations are still going on. As you know, finances for these actions are coming externally. So the negotiations usually last a bit longer. But there are also some good news. There will be only 2 financial mechanisms, not 5 anymore. And this is called IPA and NDICI. So IPA is for Western Balkans, which is, I guess, relevant for today. There will be more flexibility. So probably more possibilities to transfer money between different countries and so on, which was one of the, let's say, negative sides of this action, and simplification of the application. Now going to key action 2, cooperation partnerships, or strategic partnerships as they have been known until now. They will be meant for universities cooperate together on ideas, so to allow organizations to increase the quality and relevance of their activities, to develop and reinforce their networks of partners, to increase the capacity to operate jointly at transnational and international level, to boost internationalization of their activities, and to share and confront ideas, exchange new practices and methods. Although the applicant here needs to be from program countries, but partner institutions can also come from partner countries, meaning non-EU countries. So Western Balkans, for example, institutions are welcome to be as a partner here. And here can also be one of the topics, for example, creation or building a new program, or renovating the existing program. Then another one is Erasmus Mundus joint master's degrees. I believe you probably know this one. It's staying the same as it is. So for jointly delivered and jointly recognized master degrees programs, and open also for partner countries, this key action is centralized, meaning you are applying directly to the European Commission. Then knowledge alliances, one of them is also Initiative European Universities, which the European Commission decided to keep because from the pilot calls, it's evident that this kind of alliances are something really positive for the higher education sector in Europe. Then we have also key action 2, centralized actions for capacity building for higher education. There are different types of actions existing: structural projects for modernization, accessibility, and internationalization of higher education in partner countries. So this is one of the actions where also institutions for partner countries can be applicants, but you need to have also partners for program countries. And the main goal, of course, is building on the existing higher education in the partner country. Another activities where institutions from partner countries can be applicants as well are under activities of Jean Monnet. So there are different types of activities here, modules that are meant for short teaching programs in European Union studies, then chairs, these are longer teaching posts with specialization in EU studies, centers of excellence for focal points, gathering knowledge of high-level experts, and networks and projects. Now, as I already mentioned, for example, for international credit mobility, which is K107, so project mobilities between program countries and partner countries, there will be no call next year. The same goes for some of the Key Action 2 activities, and these are capacity building. But the good news is that there will be call for Erasmus Mundus joint master degrees programs and Jean Monnet. The reasoning behind this, as you can see also from the finances column, is that some of them are financed only from the external budgets, and some of them are financed from both budgets, and those that are financed from both budgets, we will have calls next year, and for those that are not, unfortunately, no. What we also might have next year are Erasmus virtual exchanges for the international dimension, but this is still under a question. I have to again apologize because I cannot give you any concrete details or information because we don't have the guide out. We don't have any kind of detailed information about the future of the program, and it would make no sense to give you the rules of these actions for current program because there will be no more calls under the current program. Yeah, and now moving to maybe the next part of my presentation is where I would like to maybe raise some challenges or also highlight some messages from us as national agency. Before choosing the right activity, you of course need to have the internationalization strategy at your institution. We've been doing quite with some institutions in Slovenia coaching on building internationalization strategies for their institutions, where then they were implementing this strategy as a part of the general institutional strategies, which means that you need to have involved all the key stakeholders, so from leadership to staff to international office, let's say quality assurance office, or also professors, students, bodies. So all the key stakeholders need to be included in the creation of international strategy so that it's really incorporated in the whole life of the institution. And when you have the strategy, then you can work on priorities and goals. And based on that, you can do the needs analysis. And after you have the needs analysis, then you can decide on the partners that you want to cooperate with and the activity or mechanism that you're going to use to finance this activity. Because it also then depends, of course, what kind of applications does the activity or mechanism demands from you? What kind of input does it want? What are the limitations? So who can be partner, who cannot be partner? What types of activities are there? Are there mobilities? Are there intellectual outputs that you need to create? Are there programs that you need to run? So as said, different types of activities demand different kinds of inputs in the application process. Also, maybe just to boost some interest, or for fun fact, let's say in K107, so the mobility projects between program countries and partner countries in Slovenia, these are the statistics of requests per budget for IPA budget, which is meant for cooperation with Western Balkans in the last 6 years. So we have started with the international credit mobilities in 2015, and you can see the demand is extremely high. So this is the most popular envelope in Slovenia. So majority of our institutions are cooperating with Western Balkans institutions. The cooperations are going well, and the demand for financing such cooperation is huge. Also, there's a lot of mobilities done also based on that. So as you can see, the realization rate is also high. So it's above 95%, which for this type of activity is really high. I can say in comparison for other maybe envelopes, the realization rate is much, much lower, let's say from 70% to 80%. So this shows that, you know, we're continuing with this tradition of good relations and of sharing the knowledge. So the interest here is extremely high. Also some statistics related to pandemic COVID-19 effect on mobilities. As you can see from the slides, we've noticed drop by 50% for both types of student mobilities, so incoming and outgoing. Although the interest of students remains, but of course, because of the external situations, it is harder for them to come or to go. Where there's even larger drop of mobilities for staff mobilities, which are of course shorter. So it kind of makes sense that staff is less inclined to go abroad for 5 days or less or a bit more than students who go for a longer period in given circumstances. And despite the fact that the virtual mobilities were only meant to be option in Erasmus Plus program in the future, because of the circumstances, it became the possibility already now. But the interest for virtual mobility is very, very low. And this is one of the challenges that I would like to raise for Alliance, such as Utopia, because I think that, you know, you have partners, strategic partners that you are cooperating with, and this is something that you can tackle all together. And we also talked with the international office at the University of Ljubljana, where they surveyed staff regarding the motivation for virtual mobility. And they received over 300 answers. And as you can see, only 20% of surveyed staff is willing to participate in virtual mobility. And what are the demotivating reasons are, for one, for example, that paperwork Erasmus demands is not worth it because they can still do virtual mobility, but outside of the Erasmus Plus context. Lack of informal space for further networking, discovering of the partner institutions. So because they're not there physically, they cannot walk around the host campuses and, you know, feel the climate, how it's working there. Language barriers become greater in virtual mobility. It's impossible to do research fieldwork, and of course, lack of personal touch and cooperation. However, there are also mentioned some motivating reasons to do virtual mobility, which is maintaining cooperation with partner institutions, a way to share knowledge and experience, potential basis for future cooperations, and more optimal use of time, and of course, less costs because there's no traveling. We were discussing a lot also, and we believe here at national agencies that one of the possible solutions could be also formalization of virtual mobility, because as physical mobility, it also demands time for preparation and then also for the execution, which in a given case, it might be expected from leadership that a professor that is doing the virtual mobility still does his lectures at home university or home faculty, and at the same time, the virtual mobility. So it needs to be formalized in a way that it's recognized that someone is doing the mobility in that time, and then in that time, he cannot be occupied with, you know, home stuff as he wouldn't be if he's going abroad. And that's so far from me, and I'm open for your questions.
Hi.
Božidar, thank you very much for your presentation. Maybe there are some
yes, I have
questions
a question
already. Yes, please.
Yes, to introduce myself, I'm International Relations Officer from the Malgarić University of Mostar, Bosnia and Herzegovina. And since I'm International Relations Officer and you're talking about mobilities, you talked about difficulties of professors going on a virtual mobility. What about the students? Because there's professors who say that they will not acknowledge the fact that students are on a virtual mobility. They will demand the students to go to lectures while on a virtual mobility, and because they don't think that the students will actually follow the curriculum on the host institution while staying at home on a virtual mobility.
Yes, I agree. Thank you for your question. Why I mentioned more staff mobility or an issue for staff to go on virtual mobility is because at least we notice that some students are deciding for virtual mobility. So we have numbers of students who are doing virtual mobilities, whereas for staff, it's 0. So basically, no one decides for among staff to do the virtual mobility.
I don't have that problem, sorry.
And also, you know, there's a lot less physical mobilities among staff during the pandemic, as you've seen from the numbers, then, you know, at least students are physically going abroad. So, but staff stopped doing the physical mobilities and they're not doing virtual mobilities. So we need to find solution, because I'm sure that none of you want to lose the cooperations also on individual levels with partner institutions.
Yes, but also it is if we want to keep it international, and if we want to keep it alive, at least that's my point of view. Sorry, I think that the students should be more in focus, because the professors get to be mobile by doing research with their partners from other institutions or from different projects, while students, the only way he can actually be mobile if he takes advantage of the mobility program. So the professor does not only depend on the mobility program to do the mobility, to travel to another university, but the student does. So, I mean, I understand I am the internationalist officer, and but we don't have the problem of professors not wanting to go. That's where I'm coming from. So.
Okay, thank you. Just to, you know, I agree, and it's not that we are saying that staff mobility is more important than student mobility, but thinking on the long term, and also if we're thinking and taking into consideration internationalization at home, if you have mobile staff bringing international dimension to his home classroom, and, you know, with experience of mobility, then he's motivating students also to do mobility, to be international. So he's bringing internationalization to the classroom, but also at the same time motivating students to go. And the mindset of such professor will be to encourage the mobility.
Well, I don't have problems with professors. They want to go and they want to be active. But thank you very much for the answer.
Okay, maybe somebody else would like to enter the discussion. We have still some few minutes.
I see also there's a question from...
Yeah, if I may, it's my question, but I can explain that a bit more. I'm not sure that I hear from your explanation of future of Erasmus Plus program, and he is developing, if it will be possible, some mobility between partner countries, not only program and partner countries. And after I will present our joint master program, it will be perhaps more clear. But if it is possible to apply for some program to realize mobility between partner countries, and if it is, who is in that case applicant?
Yes, thank you for the question. I'm not sure it will be part of, let's say, the existing activities. If I'm not wrong, there was already pilot programs or projects in the current program for African regions where they could apply for mobilities between different African regions or different African countries. I don't know if they're extending this kind of idea wider, so for the whole international dimension, but I believe that in a given international credit mobility activity, this will not be the case because the financing goes through the program country and institutions who is still the applicant. At least this is what they've told us so far. Until we don't have the guide in our hands, we don't know the exact rules, how it will work. But since I've been also part of the working group that's working on the creation of the international dimension credit mobility, this hasn't been discussed, to be honest, or on the table so far.
Okay. If there's no more questions, I would like to thank once again Božidar for his nice display of all the dimensions of the program and the possibilities we have, but detailed information is still to come, and we'll have to pay attention to the novelties, to the new information on that. Božidar, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we would like to listen to concrete cases of study program design and approaches to this activity from 3 presenters. The first is coming from Freie Universität Brussels. It's Catherine Descartes. She's dealing with internationalization of education. The second presentation will be given by Polonca Miklavc Valenčič from the University of Ljubljani. She's head of undergraduate education department. And the last but not least presentation will be given by Željko Vaško from the University of Banja Luka. He will present us an interesting case of an international program which his university has together with a German university. Željko Vaško is Vice Dean of the Faculty of Agriculture of the University of Banja Luka. So I think I'm looking forward actually to listen to these 3 approaches, cases, practices. And I would like to call in Catherine, if you are with us, please, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you for inviting us to contribute to this session. I think there is a lot of valuable exchange taking place today and this week, and it's very interesting to see and share all the experiences and insights. So I am Catherine Dert, and I am the Internationalization Coordinator for the VUB Faculty of Physical Education and Physiotherapy. But I'm not alone here for VUB today. I have 2 colleagues joining me today. It's Professor Heidi Ottevare from the Faculty of Engineering and Professor Stefan de Korte from the Faculty of Sciences. So there's gonna be 3 of us sharing some experiences.
Excellent, you are all welcome.
Thank you. So let me share my screen. You can see my PowerPoint right now?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Yeah, so we as a VUB, we have of course a privileged and unique location of being in the capital of Europe, and this creates a lot of opportunities for student learning, for cooperation, for internationalization. VUB aims to be a Flemish university, as we belong to the Flemish region and the Flemish educational system. Flemish is our main language, and we also have campuses on other locations in Flanders outside Brussels. But we are also a Brussels university in this very big melting pot city with international companies, European institutions, but also different language groups, cultures, minorities. And apart from that, VUB also wants to be a European university, and of course Utopia is the way to go then. But we are also an international university with a lot of partners and cooperations outside the European Union. And we want to keep and stimulate openness to the world for our students and our staff members. And a lot of our programs are already using the opportunities this Flemish, Brussels, European, international position gives us. But as always, there is still room for improvement as well, and I think it's a very good opportunity that we have within Utopia to learn from each other. So what we will do in the upcoming minutes is we want to share 3 ways of how we integrate internationalization in our curricula. First of all, we have international programs, and my colleague Stefan de Korte will guide you through the Master of Science program for Cities and Urban Studies. And then Professor Heidi Ottevare will take us through the Master in Photonics program, which is a European master, and there is a compulsory mobility integrated in the curriculum. And then finally, I will share 2 examples of how we, in a Flemish-speaking program, work on internationalization of the curriculum. So, Stefan, the floor is yours.
Okay, Katrin, thank you very much. So if I say next slide, you change every time? Okay, thank you. So I'm the international coordinator for the VUB of the Erasmus Mundus program for cities, and a spin-off program from that for cities program, which is called MUS, which is the Master Urban Studies. So I will focus a little bit or mainly on 4 cities. Could you go back? Because I need the first slide. Yes. Okay, so 4 cities is located at 4 different European cities. It's a consortium of 6 different universities, 2 in Brussels, then the University of Vienna, the University of Copenhagen, and then the 2 Madrid universities. Next slide, please. Yes. So it's an interdisciplinary program, both masters in urban studies. So we have teachers and researchers from different faculties, ranging from sciences over social sciences, humanities, engineering departments, and so on. The students we're recruiting coming from a vast array also of different disciplines. Important to mention is the fact that both programs are actually part of a wider educational portfolio within the VUB, but also with the core partners. I think this is important to mention because we started out to think both programs right from the start, beyond the program itself, looking how we could cooperate with other programs, how we could share course units, how we could share research also. So this is important, I think, to mention. The connection with research units and research networks is also very important for us. That feeds into our curriculum, and actually we feed them back with PhD students which come out of our both programs. So both masters are 2-year masters, 120 ECTS spread over 4 semesters. To give you an idea of the volume, so we have 100 to 150 students in these 2 programs, very international, with up to 50% non-EU students for the 4 Cities Erasmus Mundus program. Next slide. Next slide. So in the development of 4 cities, it was very important that we were supported at the beginning by an international network. So in this way, actually, EUTOPIA could also play a role in developing new programs. So in our case, which dates already 14 years back, it was UNICA, which is a network of the universities of capitals of Europe. And they were key to actually getting the support right from the start from the upper management of all participating universities. That was very important in the development of our program. Secondly, is the support by Erasmus, first of all for curriculum development, but also due to the Erasmus Mundus funding, because that allows you to attract really good students. You can offer them a very attractive scholarship. It also pays for a lot of pocket money to actually organize the program. And not to be underestimated is the label Erasmus Mundus, which actually opens quite some doors also within your institution or between institutions. So Erasmus Mundus has been a key leverage to our program. So up until recently, we had a fixed curriculum, which ended in a joint degree. 2 years ago, we added the possibility to take up internships in the second year. So we now have a limited choice of 3 tracks within the program. So 4 cities has been very successful, also due to the Erasmus Mundus funding, attracting much more students than we can actually cater for. So the program has 35 to 40 students intake. We have more than 500 eligible applications each year. So to cater for that demand, we decided 4 or 5 years ago to launch a spin-off of the 4 cities program, which is the MUS, Master Urban Studies, which is a local international program, which is organized by the two Brussels universities. Just to tell you that one program can trigger another. Okay, next slide. I'll try to be brief. Yes, so the curriculum quickly is one of a compulsory mobility. Students start in Brussels, then they go to Vienna in the second semester, Copenhagen and Madrid in semester 3 and 4, with the possibility since 2 years of a part of the students, actually 1 out of 4 students takes up an internship either in a research unit or as a work placement. Next slide, please. Now we learned from 4 cities when we put together the curriculum of the Master Urban Studies. So there we work a bit different, also because students stay in Brussels, although a lot of them do a classical Erasmus exchange within Europe. But there, our model there is to have a common core and to have electives, disciplinary electives. One of the complaints by students in 4 cities was that the program was not flexible enough and that we're missing disciplinary foci, yes. So a student in a MUS program takes the common core in combination with 2 elective modules. Next slide. Yes, the teaching format I will not talk about because otherwise I run out of time. So one last thing I want to say is about the organization of 4 cities. Well, I suppose you all get the slides afterwards, so you can have a look at what you can find on these slides here. So we have an international board, local coordinators, and an international management team. 2 things I wanted to say about this. One is for the international board, we opted right from the start to have physical meetings 4 times a year, each time in one of the cities. Now we combine them with some teaching activities, thesis teaching activities, follow-up seminars with students. But we think that these physical meetings are really key in, or have been key in the development and the coherence of the program. So if you ever would doubt if you would invest in this mobility, we think that the advantages outnumber the costs. Then very last point is that of the international management team. If you develop a program, don't underestimate the amount of tasks which will not be taken up by your local administrations or even the international development, the international departments of your university. Just make sure that there's enough manpower to take this international management at heart. Okay, and the last slides are just the two websites of the two programs. Thank you.
Okay. So good evening. My name is Heidi Ottevare. As Katrijn introduced, I'm belonging to the Faculty of Engineering, and within our program, we prepare our students to be ready to help industry and with their innovation. So as you can see on the next slide, photonics is in fact the science and technology that has to do with light. So we make use of the properties of light and apply it in a variety of applications. So you can see on the next slide that today in our life, although photonics might not be familiar to you, we use it every day, going from panels and projectors, displays, fiber to the home, solar panels, Internet of Things, even going to endoscopic systems, for example, for medical applications. So there is therefore also a large demand from companies to have education in photonics. And that's the reason why we introduced in 1994 a program in photonics at VUB. At that moment, it was still a Dutch-speaking program, and we were the first on the European continent to have a program both in training and education of photonics. A few years later, it was in 2006, we decided to go for an international program. And at that moment, we decided to team up with our colleagues from Ghent University to set up a European Master of Science program in photonics. So the core of the program is that the first 2 semesters, they mainly get courses on the core of photonics. So they get introduced into different aspects, both they get theory and already some exercises. Then in a later stage during those semesters, they also get hands-on training. Very important, as you could see here on the slide, is the summer break in between semester 1 and 2 and semester 3 and 4. Because during that moment, we allow our students to do an internship. An internship is very important for engineers because that's where they learn the skills in a real setting where they will also have to apply it in a later stage. And then in the second year, so semester 3 and 4, our students get more advanced courses and also multidisciplinary courses. Because you can imagine if you have to work somewhere in a company, you have to develop a product. It's not only the things that has to do with light that are important, but also informatics, processing of signals and electronics, all those things come into play. And therefore it's very important that we also teach our students to work in a multidisciplinary environment. And then in the last semester, our students work on their master thesis such that they can obtain their degree in photonics. But the focus of my presentation today, as you can see on the next slide, is to show you that next to the core and advanced courses they have, they also get, as I mentioned already earlier, some courses in multidisciplinary skills like electronics, engineering, etc. But the thing, as I said, the core focus of my presentation today, what Katrijn also introduced already, is this international experience. So we decided to bring in some compulsory international experience. And you can see on my next slide that we based ourselves there on a study which was done by the European Commission. As you can see here on the top left, there was a survey done, and it shows that for employers, it's very important to show that students do have some international experience, especially because during these international experiences, they also learn more their transferable skills. Because they are alone, they are in a new setting, a new environment, so they also have to train themselves, to work there, to adapt quickly, to be flexible. That's the things employers want. So therefore we decided, well, within our program, let's build in some international experience, which is compulsory. And that's how we came to what you see on the next slide. There are some opportunities to implement this internationalization aspect. So we offer the students different possibilities because some students do have some constraints, private related, financially related. And that's the reason why we said, look, there are different options, but everyone should go on an internal exchange experience. So students can either take up some courses. It goes through a standard Erasmus exchange of 1 semester at one of our partner universities. They can also go on an exchange for doing a master thesis. That's also the reason why we have devoted our last semester to only the master thesis, because that makes it much easier for our students to go on an exchange specifically and only for the master thesis project. A third option is that they go on an exchange for both, combining courses and a master thesis, so they go for a full year. Typically, our students go in semester 3 and 4, so that during their second master year, they take one of those 3 options, because we first want to train them in the basics. So this semester 1 and 2, they follow here at VUB, and then semester 3 and 4, they can choose one of those options. If those periods are too long for our students, they can choose for a shorter period of going abroad. One of the options is choosing an international internship. Can be done at a company or at a research institute. It's a 10 ECTS course, so they are 12 weeks abroad, typically either between master year 1 and master year 2. It's in summer period, or they even can do it if they desire after their courses at master 2 during the summer after master 2. If even they believe this 12 credits is too long, we also offer 2 more light versions, let's say, where they either carry out within the framework of their master thesis some short visits to partner researchers' labs, where they do some experiments which are needed for their master thesis. Or in a last option, they can also go for a summer school, attend a summer school abroad, and then they also have to report us on that. Good. If we see on the next slide, I mentioned already for studies being either following courses or doing a master thesis, we have some collaboration set up all through Erasmus+, such that students also can apply there for a scholarship. We have some preferred exchange partners. So these are our partners with whom we set up already a program, some specific courses which they can follow. And then we have some other exchange partners where students then really have, as in a regular exchange, have to choose from the course program some specific courses. I will not go into detail on those, but yeah, we try to make a good map and choose some excellent partners within the field of photonics engineering. So next to the study, our students can also, as I said already, go for an internship. So it's typically done in summer, and they can do the internship either at an institute. Here you see a few institutes with whom we collaborate, going from the north of Finland to the south of Europe, being Spain. Next to these research institutes at the bottom, you also see some logos of companies. So we also collaborate with companies throughout Europe to send our students there for these exchange programs and internship programs together with the companies. On my next slide, you will see that once students graduate from our program, there are also ambassadors throughout the whole world. If we see all our graduates, they end up either in industry or in research, and this all over the world, being from Latin America to Australia. And now we have already some of our alumni who even are CEOs and professors in many international countries. Finally, I would like to conclude that our program, as you can see on the slide, if Katrin pushes on the next bottom, it's an international multidisciplinary program. We have a good balance between theory and research, which is very important if you go for an engineering program, because that's what companies really want. We also bring in entrepreneurship and innovation, as it's very important for engineers to be able to also build up their own companies. We have some renowned professors in the domain of photonics. And finally, very important for us is also job opportunities and helping our students to create a real platform for finding very interesting jobs and help them towards their employability. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your contribution. I am sorry to say that we are running out of time. Catherine, did you want to really add something very briefly, or shall we stop here and leave time for discussion?
I think it's okay if we leave time for discussion. That's perfectly fine.
Okay, Catherine, Heidi, Stefan, thank you very much for the presentation. And now we are moving immediately to Ljubljana. I would like to call Polonca to join us and present what is going on here in Ljubljana, please.
Administration, administration, administration. I'm trying to share the screen. Are you seeing the presentation?
It's coming.
It's coming?
Oh, yeah, it's okay.
Okay. I hope you see it now.
Yeah.
Yeah, can I start?
Yeah. Just
rolling.
Just click presentation.
I have.
No.
Not working. Steve, can you help us?
Microsoft PowerPoint is not responding. No, this is really frustrating. There's something very similar to Tomaž. Okay. I'll start again. I hope this doesn't take too much time. I'll just run through my presentation, if that's okay. Is anything happening on your screens?
No.
No. We've tried this before, so I'm really surprised.
Steve, can you help us maybe? Our technician is somewhere over here.
Is he over there?
I think so. So he should be able to assist.
I'm sorry about this, but...
no problem.
Is it on?
No.
No? It's on my screen. Liz, could you try perhaps? I sent you my presentation just in case.
Yeah, just a second.
Can you see it now?
Yeah. We see the presentation.
You see it now.
But maybe it will work now. Try to move the slides.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just have to go to the very beginning. This is my beginning.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much for your understanding. I'm very happy to be here to have the opportunity to share with you some of my views, which might not be so, which might not be so substantial in terms of content of learning and teaching at the university. They're more on the side of administration, sometimes called bureaucratization of some processes of accreditation of study programs. But this is a view, we have to look at it too. Now, my presentation is how we go about accreditation of a new study program at the University of Ljubljana. It's a very specific, a national specific theme in terms of accreditation process. And I can look through it, I can go through it through the eyes of university administration. I'm heading the University Service for Bachelor and Master Study programs, and we are supporting and cooperating with the university members, faculties, and art academies in their efforts to accredit, upgrade, develop, and care for the study programs they have accredited. Now, just a broad context in which my presentation is taking place is about University of Ljubljana, which is the largest university in Slovenia, and the figures actually show that we take care of more than half of the Slovenia's higher education students. And we have autonomy, which is granted by the constitutional law. However, the process of accreditation does not go into that autonomy. We have to follow the rules and regulations which are set by the national authorities in order to get accredited as an institution and as a study program. Now, the University of Ljubljana has had 100 years last year, and it's grown since then. So it's grown in number of faculties and art academies, as well as it's grown in numbers of study programs. So actually the position of the University of Ljubljana in terms of catering for study fields is actually a comprehensive one. So we are a comprehensive university covering all ISCED fields of education. That makes it more intriguing and more interesting in terms of accreditation of study program, because they don't all fit the same pattern. So we have to have certain modifications, we have to have certain adaptations so that we can accommodate in the process as well as in the content all the differences in disciplines and all the differences in international relations which are attached to certain study programs. Now, this is the common framework in which we work. So the university offers bachelor, master, and doctoral study programs. We do not offer short cycle higher vocational education, but this is the framework in which our study programs are set once they are accredited. We have been a member of the Bologna architecture of study programs since 1999. We were the country in the first group to sign this agreement, which was not really easy because the structure of study programs changed significantly after the Bologna reform. Now, to accreditation. Accreditation and accreditation authorities in Slovenia are something to be closely connected to. Also, in the very early stages of study programs, namely the accreditation is strictly regulated, and you have to think about it at the very beginning of initiative, in order not to, knock on the wrong door at a later stage of developing a study program. We collaborate very closely with all the initiatives that start at the university, and that might not end as a new study program, but might end as another option of implementing a certain idea or a certain creative development in study at the university. Now, accreditation of higher education institutions in Slovenia is a prerequisite if you want to be in officially recognized framework of higher education. In Slovenia, you have to be accredited as an institution. And if you want to give accredited and recognized higher education degrees, you have to accredit the degrees. And that is before you offer them on the market, before you offer them to the candidates to be enrolled in. Now, accreditation of higher education institutions is periodical, so every 5 years, the university gets accredited. Now, we are currently in the process of reaccreditation of our university, which is quite a burden to say for everyone at the university. However, it's also an opportunity to see the moving forwards, the developments of the university, as well as some setbacks we might not be aware of. The accreditation of study programs, however, is permanent. So the study program has an accreditation and is available to the candidates until the accreditation is revoked. The revocation of accreditation can be done upon initiative of the accreditation authority or the responsible higher education institution. We can also say a certain study program we do not wish, it has been outdated, whatever, we don't want to keep it anymore, we can ask for revocation of accreditation. Now, the National Accreditation Authority is Slovenian Quality Assurance Agency. Now, this agency has been established in 2010, and it actually grew from the beginning of 90s with the Higher Education Act, and finally became independent in 2010. And this accreditation done by Slovenian Quality Assurance Agency is obligatory. Any other form of accreditation is optional and is in a way benchmarking in international environment, but does not contribute to the legal requirements. Now, accreditation rules and regulations are strict. They're very strict. That's why I'm saying it's really important that when an initiative rises, it's usually bottom-up initiative, full of motivation, full of enthusiasm, full of ideas, creativity, and everything, and that's absolutely fantastic. We encounter that every day, and I'm very happy to see you having the same enthusiasm as well from your presentations. And the legal procedures and the administrative procedures have to accommodate the enthusiasm and help and enhance and find a way to implement these enthusiastic ideas, of course, upon certain conditions, prerequisites that have to be met. Now, what has to be met is written in the Higher Education Act, which prescribes the elements of a study program, in university rules and guidelines, which is also a framework within which the offer of study programs and accreditation of study programs is closely looked at, so as not to repeat the same contents in various programs, so as not to multiply, so as to be progressive, so as to be international, so as to be keeping up with the global issues. And there are rules which have to be met and are set by the Slovenian Quality Assurance Agency. And now, not every new idea results in a new study program. That has to be said. Some ideas are actually more or better accommodated in other forms, be it in additions to the already existing study programs, accredited study programs, be it in as a non-degree programs, be it as extracurricular activities, or be it in as addendums to the syllabus, which are not necessarily as heavily bureaucratically burdened. So we try to find every accommodation for every, shall I say, initiative that comes from different triggers, either from developments in disciplines, cross-disciplinary links, you know, all these triggers that have been mentioned before. And it has to be said, yes, that a new idea is always a bottom-up, in a way, a bottom-up experience. It comes from cooperation of individual teachers. It comes from cooperation with university faculties, with other faculties, with research institutes, with professional associations. So it's always something that is, shall I say, of mixed origin, which is absolutely good, because the brainstorming is a necessary prerequisite for any advancement, for any development, and it has to be a ground even for a new study program. Now, these are our partners. They can also contribute. They are the partners in crime and in accreditation of study programs. and in any sort of subject. So the issues which are, of course, on the table: climate change, species extinction, sustainable energies use, and so on, and overpopulation, consumption of meat, anything, water management. And once this brainstorming is done, once the partners in this motivation as to make some development in teaching and learning environment, make some development in new qualifications, which might be or will be or are definitely already demanded by the labor market, have to come up with a new study program core concept. Now, the core concept of a study program is made of these elements. So these elements, which have to be, defined, not in detail, but in broad, shall I say, in broad frameworks, in broad outlines. One of the most important elements, of course, these are very obvious, I think, as I was searching on Google and on internet, trying to find universities that had a bit different or a lighter approach in terms of bureaucracy and administration, I couldn't find one. I really couldn't, because everyone is aware that the start, that the ground which you build on is absolutely has to be a very solid ground. Otherwise, when you come to the graduate, when you come to learning outcomes, it might all fall apart. So what is important here is that the program is defined in terms of discipline and cycle. So it has to be said, this is a bachelor program, this is a master program, this is a doctoral program, because every other element goes with that concept. What is, in terms of international cooperation, very important is cooperation with other institutions in an international dimension. This was actually mentioned many times today. Now, when other institutions, when you're the only institution providing the study program, the administrative part is relatively easy. But when it comes to cooperation between foreign universities and the University of Ljubljana, many other issues come up which you have to deal with at the very beginning of the initiative. So those are some language issues, those are the issues of the study year, those are the issues of compulsory mobility, the issues of finance, the resources, and the shared responsibility. So this is a very important part in which the procedure for accreditation slightly differs, it is slightly more demanding, but at the very early stage, when the core concept of the program is being developed, this is something which affects also the administrative procedure, which is going towards the accreditation of a study program. Now, learning outcomes is obviously something I don't have to talk about. I think Tomaž mentioned, he was talking about like degree profile or something. And this learning outcomes have to correspond to the cycle and to intended qualification. And of course, which is of crucial importance, is the job opportunities, so graduates' employment possibilities. There have to be analysis, developments on labor market, and cooperation with the professional, obviously, professional associations, which I have to say, really like to cooperate. They have a need to cooperate in higher education qualification development. We also include students. The inclusion of students comes in different stages and is of different intensity, but the students' opinion and the students' contribution to the core concepts of a study program are crucial. Now, the quality assurance management of a study program, that's a plan that has to be presented. as much as financial and human resources management in the development of this program. Now, core concept is confirmed by the university member senate, so the faculty senate, and is proposed to the university to be included in the work plan of the university. Now we come to the 5 crucial stages of the program accreditation. I've identified 5 broad stages, which approximately take 2 years. Now, this is when you run through the procedure. You can get accredited in 2 years when you're really dedicated and when you really dedicate your sources to the program accreditation. So that's why I say that sometimes some initiatives might be better off as development of an already accredited study program, especially in the international environment. We have very many good practices that accommodate very good initiatives and that accommodate very many students, many more students than in joint study programs, for instance. And that's why we try to find the best accommodation for those initiatives and to achieve the goals which were actually meant in that particular initiative. Now the 5 steps are here to assure the quality assurance of the program, to assure the good quality and good concept of a study program before it is accredited. So to avoid as many mistakes, to avoid as many, let's say, very typical mistakes, or to make a breakthrough with a concept of a new study program. So the program has to be included in the work plan of the University of Ljubljana. That's done on the basis of that core concept of a study program. And when the program is included in the work program, then the member of the university, which means the faculty, staff, and the teachers that are behind this concept, have to fill the application for accreditation of a new study program. The application is online application, and this is the stage where the program is described in very detail. This is a detailed description of a study program, of curricula, of a syllabus, of all the units of the syllabus of this program, and all the circumstances in which the program is going to be offered and provided. Now, when this is done, it's evaluated. This is revised from the formal point of view and evaluated by 3 external evaluators. They come from the same discipline, or they come from also other universities, and they give independent view on the study program and on the contents of the program. The program has to have 14 elements, which are prescribed by the Higher Education Act. However, the stress that they have to give is the learning outcomes and all the design of the program, whether they match, whether they are consistent, whether they are going through the particular goal to the learning outcomes and to the profile of the graduate of the study program. Now, if this is okay, if this is then settled between the evaluators and between the proposed program, the application for accreditation is approved by the Senate. And when it's approved by the Senate, it goes to accreditation to the Slovenian Quality Assurance Agency. When the program is credited, as I've said, we can offer it for enrollment. Now, the study is accredited for permanent term of time unless somebody revokes or somebody proposes the revoking of the study program. Now, this is the final picture. These are the numbers of our study programs. I was only saying the accreditation goes for study programs of Bologna cycle, so of degree, and of the programs which are specialized or updating or complementing study programs, which are available after completed master or after completed bachelor. It's not going for summer school, extracurricular activities, it's not going for winter schools or any other sorts of lifelong learning. I hope I didn't bring this to a dead end. This is something you have to consider. It's not painful, but it's good to be on board with these information. Thank you.
Thank you, Polonca. I think this is important to know because academics are viewing this process from another point of view many times, and it's nice to be aware of other points of view when you start such a business. So the time is rushing, and I would immediately call in our last speaker today, Željko Vaško. I already presented him. Please, Željko, the floor is yours.
Oh, sorry. I share and again. Okay, good evening, everybody. And do you see my presentation?
We see. Try to move slides.
Okay.
Oh, it's okay. It's fine.
Yes, and thank you for invitation to be part of your workshop. And now I am more familiar with your alliance and with some other colleagues. But we got invitation from our university to present our experience in accreditation one international master program in cooperation with our German partners at Faculty of Agriculture. It is International Master Program in Agro-Management. We still have only some experiences, and I think that we are on some way to fully implement that, but I will explain where we are now and how we come to this point. Shortly, our university is 45 years old university, and still in the group of youngest universities, I think, in Western Balkans and in Europe especially. And there are 17 faculties and many study programs and graduated students. And our Faculty of Agriculture is one of that 17 faculties. We are established in 1992, and in this moment we have close to 100 employees, of which is half teaching staff, and we have about 600 active students. We are one of rare faculties of our universities who is on the model 3+2+2 years. That means that accepting Bologna system in 2006, we also modified our whole study program, which was on bachelor level 4 years. And I think that is also important because thanks to that, now we can easier exchange students with other universities, especially on second master level of education. And I said in introductory part that we accredited, listening these steps about accreditation, and I can say that we passed that twice in last 1-2 years. Once it was on the national level and one on international level. And our partner is Weihenstephan Triesdorf University from the Germany. It is in Bavaria, part of the Germany. And that university has about 2,000 students, and they are specialized only for agricultural sciences. And one of their study programs is International Master Course in Agro-Management. And that is where we find common interest and when we start to intensively cooperate. Originally, they established that course, I think, 20 years ago. and that start on way that they invite foreign students from many countries to come in Germany and to be educated, but it was like early stage of that development of that master course. Second stage was that they offered many partners in other countries to implement and to offer same course in those countries, and we are one of those universities. This is some kind of, I don't know, figure from their website, and they are 16 partner universities which implement now International Master Course in Agro-Management, AMA, and you can see that they are partners mainly from Eastern Europe, from Russia, Ukraine, Georgia, Armenia, and also from Poland, and many other East Europe or Asia countries. And now we are part of this big family. I don't know how they will adjust this picture because there are many and many partners. And on the website, we are mentioned as now only one partner from former Yugoslavia countries and only one university from Bosnia and Herzegovina. We achieved that in last year, and now we are preparing to start to implement that master course. And shortly, I will explain how we come to this position and how we become partner with Weihenstephan University. In early stage of our development, our faculty, we were looking for possibilities for further education of our best students. And in 2000, our first student came to master IMA master study to Triesdorf. Second year it was 2, and in that first group was in total five students from our faculties who finished their master degree in Weihenstephan University in Germany. But what was important that of that 5, three of them came back to our faculty and become assistants, and now they are professors of our faculty. That means that thanks to strong alumni activities of Weihenstephan Triesdorf University, they never stop communication with that people, and they were trying to establish some further possibilities of cooperation. And again, we start to send our students to Triesdorf since 2014. And until now, that is 9 new students who are finished or are in this moment in Triesdorf. And in 2015, we start discussion with our colleagues from Weihenstephan University, because we had from time to time, some meetings and visits to start to join that family of universities who accredited their international master course in agro-management. And intensively we work on that in 2019. We call that in law language elaborate, or some kind of feasibility study. And we set all that required preconditions, and we was ready for initiate accreditation in 2019. But it was, of course, because it is international master's course, and accreditation went in Germany. And we defensed that our idea, our model, and I was part of our team, and we successfully finished that in Germany. And the program is mainly similar as it is delivered in Germany, but I will explain some differences of that in our case. But what is important that in this moment we are ready to fully implement that program, to start with teaching with our own staff. And also because I am some period on position of Vice Dean for Science and International Cooperation, and we have some queries of international students to come to Banja Luka, to our faculty, and they are asking about what we offer in English. And until now, we don't have any program in English, and that is one of limitations for increase our mobility and two-ways mobility. And we also accredited this program first time in English, and now we are ready to accept some international students. We hear about Erasmus program and the Arcepus program and other programs, and we will be ready to accept international students. I think in this moment we don't have big ambitions to have full-time students who will totally be graduate in Banja Luka, but is our mobility window. It could be I think very attractive. And what is idea of this international master's course? It's I think some unusual for in Balkan countries. The German model is that they insist on one full semester or internship or practical semesters. That means that students start with internship in some company, farm, or institutions, and after that there are 2 semesters of teaching of compulsory and elective courses, and 4th semester is preparation for master thesis and some case studies. And we was obliged to follow titles and content of that 10 compulsory subjects or modules from Trisdorf University, and we are free to offer whatever we want as elective courses for students who will be enrolled on this master program. And for us is big challenge how we will animate our companies to get that students for 1 semester of internship, because we have internship, but usually it takes 2 weeks in second and third year. And now we start discussions with our companies, but our partners from Germany are ready to help us in that stage, and they said if you will not have companies for that, you send them in Germany, and after that internship they will come back to Bosnia. But I think that we will succeed to find, because in this moment our target is maximum 20 students. As I mentioned, that accreditation, first accreditation we got from Quality Assurance Institute in Germany in 2019, and we was very, very proud and happy we back to Banja Luka, but we discovered that is not valid for Bosnia and Herzegovina, that our national accreditation authorities don't automatically accept that, and we spent 1 year more to accredit same master program in according with our national rules, and we successfully finished that in November 2020. And that means that now we have that study program accredited and international and at national level, and we are preparing to invite first student for next academic year in June at our university. What we see as our advantages in participation with this international master program and implement that international master's course in Banja Luka, that is of course to adopt some experience and best practice from the Germany and from other countries, because there are also some countries who are in advance and they implement this program 15 or 20 years in, for example, in Russia or in Ukraine and other countries. It is possibility to exchange knowledge experience, and it's also possibilities for mobility of teaching staff, administrative staff and students. And I ask about that possibilities of exchange within Erasmus program between partner countries, because I think that is great opportunity for our and from students from other universities who is part of this big family, this network, because they are same subject, it is same program, it is easy to come here to Banja Luka or our students to go on some other universities and pass some exams in other universities, and automatically to have to have that obligations are accepted at home universities. What is also important and what is, I think, for me, very, very really convincing our German partners to help all as in implementation, as much as better implementation of this program, is that they established online platform for teachers for all subjects. For example, I had 2 sessions for one subject which I will teach next year, and they are explaining, they are sharing materials, they invite all professors to discuss together about best ways how to organize that learning process. And it's really something what is unique. I don't hear that somebody else offer that, because it's systematically for each subject there is platform, there are materials, there are regular meetings every second week, and on that way we are together cooperate and discussing. And I think that is also very easily to share teachers from different universities, because they are all prepared to teach and same curricula, same topics. And of course, our some further goal is perhaps to have a double degree diploma with university in Germany. There are also some requirements on their side, on our sides, but I think in some mid-term objective, it is, I think, also realistic. And also, what is possibility? We also had 2 key exchange programs with Weihenstephan University. We tried to prepare one capacity building Erasmus project. Unfortunately, we don't win that on that call, but we can together prepare projects. We can easily find partners for different type of the projects and different programs when we are in that same network, and when we are very, very familiar with each other member of that network. And I put this on last slide, that there is still a lot of work ahead, but together we are stronger. I think that in this family, we all are, or we will be in some win-win combination.
Thank you very much, Professor Željko Vaško. Thank you also to other presenters, Polonca, Catherine, Heidi, Stefan. I think we should have devoted more time to these cases, because they are very interesting, and we can see different perspectives of program design when listening to such presentations. In fact, we have come to the end as far as time concerned, but maybe somebody would have a pressing question to the presenters. No questions. All are tired. There was a long afternoon today. Quite dynamic, interesting to me at least. I hope for you as well, and for the other attendants. So I would like to thank you for today's participation and invite you to join us tomorrow as well. There will be interesting discussion tomorrow. Among the sessions, I would especially mention that there will be 4 students presenting their views and experiences with regard to the program design, and I think there's a need to listen to students and their comments on that. Okay, thank you once again. Take a rest and see you tomorrow.